What is a Resolute chapter? That is the question we hear most these days. So since Continental Congress, and since so many members are finding out about what's happening in the DAR in terms of the DAR recognizing men to be women and therefore being eligible for membership, we commonly hear the question, what is a Resolute chapter? And something you must understand is that this is a term that has come about organically. So our grassroots effort to restore the DAR started with trying to amend the bylaws, going through that procedure through Article 21 3 different times for 3 years in a row, and each time those were rejected by the National Board of Management. So chapters realized that there was a mechanism to request the President General to call a special meeting. This is Article 8, Section 7 of the National Bylaws that says, upon the request of 30 chapters in 10 states, the President General shall call a special meeting. So, chapters are adopting resolutions that are requesting the President General call a special meeting. Last year in August, we hired a professional parliamentarian to help us through this process, and he drafted these resolutions for us. So, when chapters do that, it just came about organically to call them Resolute chapters because they're adopting a resolution. Now, it's also could be said that these chapters are also resolute in their desire to see the DAR restored, so it fits in that way too. But just to clear the confusion, this is an organic term that we have given to these chapters. So when state and national officers say we don't recognize, quote, Resolute chapters, and we don't, that's not an official designation, that is true. Again, this is an organic name that has come about. But don't be confused when they say that they don't recognize the term Resolute chapter with meaning they don't recognize these resolutions that are being adopted, because they certainly do, they must. So chapters are operating within the framework of our national bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order to duly adopt a motion, these resolutions, to ask the President General to call a special meeting according to Article 8, Section 7 of our national bylaws. So you may be hearing from state and national officers that we don't know what a Resolute chapter is, or we don't recognize that term. That is not the same thing as them saying they don't recognize these resolutions. So don't be confused by that. They do recognize these resolutions, and they must recognize these resolutions. So the next question that we hear is, why should my chapter become a Resolute chapter at this point in time? If you've already met the 30 chapter and 10 state threshold, why should I present this to my chapter? And there's a couple of reasons I would say. First is that the President General has not called the special meeting, even though 3 times the number of chapters and states have requested that. So if you feel your chapter would support this, that would be a good thing to sign on to this, to show support for this, and to remind the President General of her duty to call that special meeting. So that's one thing. And the other thing is for symbolic reasons. If you would like your chapter's name to be part of the historic record as part of restoration, and that was something that was important to me, and I know that's something that's very important to many members, is they want their chapter name to go down in history as being a part of this movement. And then the last question that we get is, will there be any repercussions to my chapter for adopting this resolution, for becoming a Resolute chapter? And that is somewhat subjective, I would say. We have been told by state officers that if chapters want to be a part of this movement, that there would be consequences. They would not get member referrals. They would not get help with applications in the genealogy department. And members have been told that if they wanted to move up to state positions or national positions, that they could not do that while being a member of a Resolute chapter. So you can just do with that what you will, but in my experience, chapters that have adopted these resolutions have only grown and thrived. My chapter has received many transfer requests. I can safely say somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 additional members that we have gained since we've become a Resolute chapter, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 plus associates. So in our experience, people are clamoring to be a part of a chapter that shares these same values. So is there repercussions? Depends on how you view repercussions, honestly. We've been able to not be bogged down by anything like that. So do with that information what you will. I hope that you will decide to become a Resolute chapter. It is something that is a symbolic and historic thing that we're going through. And if you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments. We're doing our best to field the many, many questions that are coming in. And I guess the last question would be, how do I become a Resolute chapter? And we will post a link to that at the bottom. And remember, throughout all of this, we believe in restoration of the DAR. We have humbly asked for God's blessing and for his provision in this, and we believe in restoration not because of who we are, but because of who he is.